In 1999,
Okay.
the Arab community had a conference, a 3-day conference, which was held at Imperial College. And there were lots of academic papers prepared. Among them was the question of integration. And they made, that study made comparison with the integration of the Asian community, the African community, and other communities. And they also compared it with the Arabs in America.
Okay.
And that study showed, of course, it's not conclusive, but it showed that, first of all, the question of identity, the problem of identity, it is based on the reaction to the person. If people apply for a job, doctors who apply for a job and use English name, and they are asked to come for an interview, but if they use their real Pakistani name, they don't get an interview. And this was a problem for the Medical Association here in Britain a period back. Secondly, when you look at the situation now, when the London police, who have a very, very difficult task to keep all those people apart, to make sure they have their right, and at the same time not to do damage and what have you, and people are all hot up mentally, but at the same time, when the police decides that you cannot have a demonstration against the BBC because 3 streets behind the BBC, there is a synagogue. Now, that is when the question of identity comes. Dr. Mustafa looks like an Englishman. He got blue eyes and light color and what have you, and so he has no problem. But I assure you, I went to a meeting with the Home Office a few years back, not now, when there was the question of stop and search. Stop and search policy at that time, and this is the figures of the Home Office 3 years after it came into effect. They have, in the 3 years, stopped something, I can't remember the exact figure, I don't want to quote figures, but something in the order of 900,000 people. Among the 900,000 people, only 1,000 were taken to the police station to be asked and investigated. Out of the 1,000 people, only about 260 were taken to court because either they didn't have a visa to stay or because they violated the income tax or whatever. They found some other thing. So when we went to see the Home Office, and at that time we didn't see the Home Secretary, she sent the Home Office, and because we were Arabs, quote, Muslims came, so we had a police officer who is a Pakistani, so that he can, you see, we are not different. We have a Pakistani officer, and there was somebody else. And they started the narrative talking about people and integrating, that's the Home Office, integrating and not integrating. But then the question was, part of the statistics showed that among, I think something about 70 or 80% of the people who were stopped and searched were young people. And they were all, 80% of them were Pakistanis or Indians or had beard or the visual side of it. Now the question was, how does this affect the younger generation by convincing them that the police and the authority is with them to protect them? Because every child who was stopped would talk to 3 of his friends, and somebody else would talk. So at the end of the day, you end up by having probably a very large number of young people who feels aggrieved. They were not mistreated. Lord Scarman, in the inner city rioting, he had a report, I can't remember, in the 80s. And he said, if a man perceives, it's not true, but he perceives that he's being unjustly treated, and if at the same time he feels, he perceives, again, it's not true, this is what he thinks, that he has no redress. So he becomes a man in the corner. And the man in the corner will behave like a man in the corner. So the identity issue comes only when there is conflict. The identity of the younger generation here in Britain, I don't think we have a problem. In America, I remember when I was young, they had signs in America, it says, no dogs or niggers. And then they end up by having a president who's black. The Conservative Party here, who's not very well renowned for its minority relations, now they have a leader who's not white. We had a prime minister who's not white. So the issues are not the visual one. I don't think we have an identity problem, but I think part of the mistakes we do, the Arabs, if we take everything into the Palestine issue. That's where, so if you have a student who fails in his exam, and he says, you know, because my teacher is a Jew, this is rubbish. Because we don't admit, yesterday, one of...
Zionists, because lots of Jewish people are with Palestine, so Zionists, you mean my teacher is a Zionist?
No, they always say that. People used to say that.
No, I'm not being very careful with my words, but this is the idea. So I think the situation is that we think we have an identity problem. I don't think we have an identity problem except when it comes into conflict or we perceive it. It's because yesterday one of the ladies I met in a conference, she said, because I wrote on the Facebook or something about Palestine, she had a flat from the council, she was going to pay, she didn't pay. And she said, they took it from me because I wrote about Palestine. I said, are you sure the council even read your Facebook? So we can put ourselves in a situation which is not necessary. Sorry, I've taken too long.
No, it's okay.